Assalamu alaikum. As we are about to begin the program, we request the high school boys to come forward, and high schools and college sisters are also welcome to come downstairs behind the glass door. Inshallah, program will start in a few minutes. The agenda will be Imam Mujahid will conduct the program for the first 30 to 45 minutes, and at the end we'll have a Qayam by Hafiz Talha Wahid and Hafiz Hamza Nadim, inshallah.
Questions then? Yeah. Huh? You're going to ask me questions?
You want to answer? You want to just...
Yeah, let's you want to ask me questions? MashaAllah.
Check 1, 2.
All right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Huh? What do you think? Might as well, I guess. Or should we just keep it very private here? We'll just keep it local. Yeah, that's fine. So as the sisters are approaching and joining us, first of all, my name is Jaime Mujahid Fletcher. Assalamu alaikum to all of you. Assalamu alaikum to all of you. Wa alaikum salam. Okay, mashallah. So whenever we were coming to the community, I initially didn't hear about this space, right, dealing with the youth. What is considered the youth here? Tell me a little bit about, like, what ages are you guys ranging from? Are you guys in high school? Yes? How many 9th graders here? 9th graders, raise your hand. 9th grade. Okay. 10th grade? 10th. All right. Senior? High school? All right, cool. Anybody like college level? No? Yeah. Arsalan was telling me that you guys are barely starting to come again, or just people getting acquainted with the masjid coming? Yeah, alhamdulillah, mashallah. And for the sisters, eventually hopefully if you want to interact and ask questions, that'll be good. So I don't know if there's a microphone or so. So I know it's getting late, and inshallah I'll make this brief. Brother Shamsur Rahman from this community, we've known him for like 7 years or so. And I guess he knows in our interaction a little bit about my background. Just asked to share a little bit with you today. And when he mentioned the youth program, first thing I know is that whenever I was your age, I didn't just sit and listen to lectures. Now, when I was your age, I was a Muslim, okay? So I'm going to try to make this as interactive as possible, okay? But it can only work with you asking questions and interacting. I'm going to, and don't be shy, you'll be all right, you'll be all right. So I'm just gonna mention a little bit about my background, and then maybe you guys ask or we discuss a little bit about details. Does that work? Yeah? And then some of the parents that are here, mashallah, I guess you brought your kids to the youth program, right? So I hope, inshallah, that we take away some good from, I'm going to be very concise and only give information that hopefully will spark your interest as youth. What I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt to remember a little bit about the context of how I was living my life transitioning from middle school to high school, so that you can hopefully see the difference in regards to your upbringing or what you know about life. Okay, and then I'll move to the age of 23 when I actually found out about Islam and what led me ultimately to embrace Islam. And in the middle of all this, please do ask any question. This is not going to be a lecture. I'm just sharing some information. The last time that I talked a little bit about this, my background like this, it was in a high school in Houston, and that high school had a kid. He wasn't Muslim. They weren't Muslims. It's a general public school. One kid showed another kid his gun. Okay, this is in Houston. And he accidentally shot his best friend and killed him. So kids were really taken aback. They were going through a lot. And, you know, there was a press conference on the media. And so some of the educators there, known of my background, and asked me to go and speak, right, to them. So I go to high school sometimes, and sometimes I may have spoken in prisons as well, right? Prisons, high schools, and then in Houston, we have a center. We have the Islamic Spanish Center, Islamico. And even though it's Islam in Spanish, it's not just Latinos who go there. It's people from different walks of life. And amongst the people who go there may be youth as well. And we have a program called Generation Jam, where people come and do poetry, right? Live poetry, okay? And back in the days when we started back like 2012, they were doing debate, but we had the opportunity to open up with youth in discussions that usually they may not be having at home or in the mosques, right? So I'm not, I want you to understand, I'm a person who has gone through a certain stage to where I've been able to get really close with some of the youth, and it's a blessing that we're able to advise whenever they needed advice, and they may have not thought that they had somebody in their corner that they could trust. And you know, we've been blessed to be able to offer some value. So having said this, I'll explain by a little bit of what makes a connection here, hopefully, inshallah, regarding myself and you guys at your age. You know, I came to America when I was 8 years old. I didn't know any English, okay? My parents came from Colombia, South America. Have you ever heard of Colombia? Yes? What do you know about Colombia? First thing that comes to mind. What is it? Ah, James Rodriguez. This is good. Soccer player. That's more positive than, mashallah. What else about Colombia? Coffee? That's very positive as well. What else? Colombia? Huh? Food? Food? Yeah, it's good food. Salsa. Yeah, that's true. Have you ever heard anything regarding drugs in Colombia? Yeah? Okay. So when my parents came from Colombia to America, even though my father was an agriculture engineer, right? An educated person, right? There was a stigma in America regarding Colombians. Okay, this is back in 1986. And my parents are people who, I don't remember in my lifetime seeing them drinking, smoking. Like, these are people who are just good people. I'm the only child. I don't have any brothers or sisters. But when I came to America, I soon learned, by the time I was in middle school, that it's totally different than Colombia or Venezuela, because I lived as a youth in both countries. America has a lot more people from different parts of the world I didn't know, right? And my parents didn't understand the things that existed in the public schools where we went, okay? And one of those things that were happening in the public schools where I went is that the movies that were coming out and the music that was coming out was influencing our environment to the point that people want to copy or follow the trend of what they're seeing, right? In the movies and the music. So in my neighborhood in Houston, called Alif, in the early 90s, there were a lot of gangs. There were drive-by shootings. People could have a block party, like a party on the weekend, and then cars pass by and shoot. We were in survival mode. There are people who later on were diagnosed with PTSD, right? Post-traumatic stress disorder, something that someone can get out of the pressure of being in a war, maybe. Some of those people were diagnosed without leaving anywhere except just being in our neighborhood. So my parents never understood why at the age of 12, people going to our high schools, were carrying weapons, for example. At random, once a week, they would bring in dogs, right, to check for drugs and guns. And, I grew up since a kid, like, I remember my father reading a lot of books. And I remember one day me asking him about God. I was like 6 years old, right? I said, what is God? And so he said, look, all I know is that there's one God. You look for your truth because I'm seeking mine. So my father was always researching, trying to find out who that one God was. And since the age of 6, I don't ever remember me praying to Jesus, Mary, doing things that people from our background did as Catholics. All I knew is that there's one God. By the age of 13, when I'm in middle school, I started realizing that the African American were trying to mimic a movie that came out, or a couple of movies that came out. Boys in the Hood was a movie came out, I think in '92, in LA. Again, they were portraying drugs, some violence, drive-by shootings. New Jack City out of New York, okay? A guy named Nino Brown was like a kingpin. He's taking over, some apartments and, selling crack. Crack was an epidemic with the African American community back in those days. Now, I'm 13, right? My parents have no clue where they brought me, but they just think America is the land of opportunity, right? And everything is just great. The school that I'm going to, public school, is huge. And maybe they're thinking back in Colombia, their schools don't have all these resources. So while my parents are thinking they gave me all this good, right, bringing me to America, all I'm thinking about is, why are African American guys beating up on Latinos like when they go to the bathroom? If a regular Latino guy just went to use the restroom in 6th grade, 7th grade, they could get jumped by 4 or 5 African American guys for no reason, just because they were brown. So there was kind of a racial war, and interestingly enough, it was initiated from African Americans towards Latinos. But Latinos didn't have any sort of organized way of standing up to this, okay? Like, these guys were making gangs, right? They have colors, they have names, they're gathering, and then Latinos just kind of by themselves. And one day, and I'm 13 years old, I'm sitting by my locker talking to a girl, and an African American guy comes up, doesn't say anything to me, just hits me right in my face. No reason. I didn't fall because my lockers were behind me. But real quick, my initial kind of response was to defend myself. My father taught me how to box since I was a kid. I knew how to box. This guy was a lot bigger than me. I was skinny. I was, a lot shorter, but I defended myself. And that guy hit me one time in front of everybody, and I ended up hitting him like 20 or 30 times in a row, knocking him to the floor. They broke us apart. I didn't know that guy was the leader of a gang. So by mistake, people in my school thought that me standing up to this guy and beating up the leader of a gang, I was the leader of a Latino gang. That was a misunderstanding. It was an assumption, right? That's how rumors start. Out of that, a lot of the Latinos got together and said, you know what? That's exactly what we have to do. We have to just stand up to these people. So that little incident led to Colombians, people from Costa Rica, Mexico, all together. And all of a sudden, they were like, what are we going to do? Asking me, what are we going to do? I was like, what do you mean, what are we going to do? These people, they don't have no right to do X, Y, and Z. And before we knew it, we were categorized as a gang in the district of Alif. Now, the definition of a gang is 3 people, okay, who gather for a common, whatever the definition was before. But what was happening with the police department, they were profiling African American and Latinos. My first time ever getting handcuffed, put in a cop car, is because I wasn't walking on the sidewalk. They call that jaywalking. So we didn't look at law enforcement like they were on our side. We looked at our parents like they don't understand. We look at the teachers like, what world are they in? People aren't over here really trying to pay attention to learning something because they're trying to survive. So fast speeding a little bit further, in the midst of the respect that was needed to be earned to live in that environment, some of my friends got shot. Some of them got hooked on a drug they couldn't get off of. And at the age of 16, somebody tried to take my life. I was coming downstairs from a party, and let's just say I had to defend myself, and I didn't know if I actually had shot someone because I had to shoot back. And so my parents sent me back home to Colombia at the age of 16 because they were like, that's not what we came to America for. By the time I got to Colombia, I didn't even know that culture because I'd been here since 8. For a lot of y'all who just grew up here and haven't lived back home where your parents are from, you may not know what it means to, have to take a really cold shower because there's no hot water. You don't know what it's like to, I had an aunt, she used to lock up the ketchup bottle because ketchup was expensive and you can't just use up all the ketchup. Here you get free ketchup everywhere you go. Right? So the limitations that I found in Colombia made me appreciate what I had in America. I didn't know that. I didn't understand it. I lived in Colombia for 2 years, and I ended up going to some of the most beautiful places. I was able to sit in rivers, eat mangoes off of trees, and I thought to myself, I'll never go back to America. Why would I ever go over there? At the age of 18, after my mind changed, rehabilitated, I wasn't thinking about, groupism. I wasn't thinking about survival. I was just thinking about getting an education like some of my cousins who were engineers, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers. I was like, you know what? If I'm going back to America, it's to get an education, then I'm going to come back to Colombia. Because these people know how to live life. By the time I came back to, at the age of 18, I'm in college here, and my mindset is different. And all of a sudden, I start seeing that now it's not about gangs, it's about making money. People are selling drugs in these colleges. And I used to try to get myself away from all of that because I was like, that's not the way. So I began to ask myself, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be something that can give a sense and a purpose. Because you see, when you don't walk with a purpose in life, you don't know where you're headed, you can be swayed here or there and you never feel fulfilled. You don't feel like you have something you're looking for, but you don't know what you're looking for. Many of you who were born into a Muslim household and know about the Deen of Islam and have parents that even care to bring you to these environments, my parents didn't even have a clue what was going on in the environment where we were growing up. And I felt bad for them because they meant well, but they didn't understand what it meant to defend themselves in the environment I was in. So how could I go and explain to them how we had to handle things? You know, my best friend at the age of 15 shot himself out of the pressure we were living. The bullet went in one side and came out the other. And that happened in the living room of a friend of ours, a girlfriend of ours, who is today my wife. I grew up with the person who I married, and I knew her since the age of 12. When her and I, as friends in college, were questioning life and asking ourselves, what's this really about? We looked into so many different religions. We used to walk into a church and ask, what did they think about life? Who was God? We would walk into a Buddhist temple, a Hindu temple, and it was one night, out of all that research and trying to figure out what life is about, trying to understand how to move and actually find the purpose of life. Because if it's just about getting things and then you die, I mean, is that really all there is? When I was 23 years old, I grew up with a guy who was doing the same things I was doing. And after leaving a club, we had liquor in our hand, and we're sitting outside of his house, and he looked at the liquor that he was drinking, and he said, I can't believe I'm still doing this. And I said, what do you mean? Right? It was normal to drink. He said, I can't believe I'm still doing this after having gone to Mecca. I said, what is that? He said, Mecca is where the house of God is. I said, what? I've never heard of a religion that says God has a house. It doesn't make any sense. And he said, nah. That house was built by Abraham and Ishmael. And I said, man, those are prophets of God. And he said, yeah, Islam's the true religion of God. I've never in my life heard something so clear. When he said Islam is the true religion of God, the clarity that I heard in the way it made me feel like whatever I was looking for in life, I had to figure out what it is that he was talking about. And I asked him, hey, let me know more about this. He's like, man, I'm not the right person to talk about this. He wasn't really, right, as a youth, as a Muslim youth, he wasn't really living it. He wasn't really practicing Islam. But just his remorse of feeling like he had been to Mecca and he was sitting there drinking made me feel like, what is it that's making him feel this way? And so he said, look, man, if you want to talk to somebody, talk to my mom. She was a Christian nun in Italy, and she left the Catholic Church and left being a nun because she had so many questions and gaps in Christianity. And eventually, after marrying my father for 8 years, she looked into Islam by herself and became Muslim by herself. Talk to her. She has the answers, right? In my youth, middle school and all that, I was looked at as the leader of a gang in Alif, a neighborhood that in the early 90s was murder capital here in America. Here I am, after going to Latin America and living a little bit, and I'm with a guy that grew up in the same neighborhood, doing the same things, but now he has this thing that his mom can tell me. And so I remember going to speak to his mom, and I was under the influence the day that I went to talk to her. And when he opened the door, he's like, nah, you can't come like that, man, to talk to my mom. I was like, why? He said, nah, you got to come right. You got to come clean. That was interesting. You know, whenever people drink or smoke or do any sort of drug, you know what it is? They're trying to fix something they can't fix themselves. So they're taking something outside to help them compensate, to make them feel in a way that they can either forget about the problem or just feel like things are all right. But when that stuff goes away, you still got the same problem and things aren't all right. So when he tells me, come back when you're right, I'm like, that's interesting. Because he himself was doing these things. So for him to talk to me like that, I was like, that's interesting. When I came back to speak to her, I remember her coming. It's the first time I ever saw a woman covered. She had hijab. And when she came out, I went to shake her hand, and she didn't shake my hand. And I was like, oh, okay, she knows her son and I had been doing. And I didn't know this whole issue of women not shaking hands and her being covered. I had no clue about that. But she asked me a question. She said, do you like science and math? And I remember in Colombia, you know, knowledge in Colombia was very esteemed. People respected knowledge and learning. When I went to Colombia, they wanted to drop me 2 grades because the educational system in America was weaker than the one in Colombia. So I gained a respect for knowledge, learning. You know, I learned physics, chemistry. We studied things like human disasters. We used to walk in the middle of the jungle in Colombia with our teachers, and they would tell us how the land formations and the rivers worked. We were studying nature in a way that just opened my mind up. And when she told me, do you like science and math? Right away I remembered Colombia. And I said, yeah. And she said, let me show you this video. And so my boy was like, are you going to see this is real? She put a video on, VHS back in the days, popped it in there, and it was a video called Quran and Modern Science by Dr. Jamal Badawi. And I remember looking at this man, and I don't know Muslims, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, this guy has a thick accent, but the way he's expressing himself, he sounds like he has not just knowledge, information, but he sounds like he's at ease. He feels calm. And when he started talking about the development of the human embryo being mentioned in the book that was revealed 1400 years ago to a man who didn't know how to read and write in the middle of the desert, I couldn't even understand how that could be possible. When he talked about the bee and the ant, I'm like, is this religion or is this like animals? And you know, like when we look at Bible or any other religious book, we don't mix all these animals and things with it. The 2nd chapter of the Quran is the cow, right? You have so I couldn't understand how this talking about the creation has something to do with the Creator. But the more that I looked at it, I said, you know what? I want to know about this. Because I would read about every religion anyway. But I never thought that there was one that was real. I never thought that there was an absolute truth. I always thought people were fighting each other based on religion. I always thought somebody was trying to game over somebody else. I always thought people kind of play games to get other people to do what they want. So there's always an interest or an angle. I didn't trust. But one thing that I did ask myself was, if I don't know about this, he knows about it, and I don't, I need to find out what it is. His mother gave me the book, the Quran. When I began to open up this book, even though I didn't speak the Arabic language, it began to make me feel at ease. My heart began to feel calm. And I no longer had the desire to drink alcohol or do any drug. That book had a healing effect that nobody could explain to me. And then I called his mom and said, listen, where can I learn more of this? Where did they teach this? So I ended up going to the local mosque, and there was a man, he was a person of knowledge teaching tafsir al-Quran, the meaning of the Quran, from the Arabic language, in English. And so I went there with my girlfriend at that time. And I remember walking in, we were the only people who are not Muslim. And I remember the Muslims, like, they were young. A lot of them were young professionals and some doctors. I remember when they saw us, they obviously knew we were Muslim. And I remember a physician, a doctor, he got up and he said, please sit right here, sit in my chair. And I was like, who are these people? Why are they nice? What do they want? When I began to read the Quran and understand the Quran and ask questions, it took about a year to ask all the questions I asked about every other religion. And it was a kid who was 16 years old who came by me one day and said, Assalamu alaikum. And I said, I don't return the salams because I'm not Muslim. I had learned in Islam, right, that if a Muslim gives salam, to somebody who's not Muslim, that not Muslim, is Anyway, there's no response to the salam, something along those lines. I was like, listen, I'm not Muslim. So, I don't do that. And he was like, why aren't you Muslim? A 16-year-old kid asking that question made me think, why? I mean, why not, right? Could I even do that? You know what I'm saying? Would I even want to do that? He said, listen, man, you should come with us. We're going to Florida. It's going to be like 3,000 Muslims. And we're leaving, and we're going on a bus, and you can stay there. And I was like, how much is that? And he was like, man, it's like $50 or $80, I don't know. And I'm like thinking, man, going to Florida, getting out of my environment, just getting away and being able to read this book may be a good thing for me. Because a lot of my friends, we were going through some pressure that could have eventually got a lot of people in trouble. And I didn't want to be associated with that anymore, so I'm trying to leave. So when I left and I ended up in Florida, it was an ijtima from the Jamaat al-Tabligh, a group of people, right, who were going on Jamaat, right? And I end up getting down from the bus, and this man that was on the bus with us, they had tried to like tell me about Islam the whole ride, and I'm like, I'm not about joining no religion, and I just felt like somebody's trying to convert me or something. By the time I reached Florida, Tampa, Florida, never been there in my life, this man came grabbing a guy by the hand, and he was crying, and he said, this guy is going to tell you about Islam. And I remember he was crying. He was Pakistani, older gentleman. And I'm like, man, he's bringing another guy to like convert me or something. And then that guy was like, hola, ¿cómo te llamas? Spoke to me in Spanish. I'm like, you speak Spanish? He's like, yeah, I'm from Colombia. I said, what? How are you Colombian, man? How are you here? What? We sat down to talk for about 3 hours. And in the middle of us talking, he loved Colombia, I love Colombia, and we were talking about the problems that exist in that in that society. And I kept saying, if people just knew this, if people just knew that. And a lot of what I was saying was coming from what I had learned from Islam. So this guy looked at me and he was like, do you realize you've been talking about Islam in a way that can fix a whole country, but you yourself have not accepted it? That just like knocked me on my knees. I felt like surrender, submission, or if I kept going that way, I'd be arrogant. Because I already knew it was real. That day, I remember telling him, I don't think the Shahada is that big of a deal. Anybody can just say some words. He said, nah, man, when you say those words, something happens. Your life changes. And so I was like, all right, I'll try it, right? I was about giving it a try. I remember going inside this mosque, and there was a Maulana teaching. And when they said, hey, he wants to take Shahada, he looked at me, and he turned away. He didn't want to give me Shahada. And so the gentleman that was on my bus, who had brought the other guy, he saw that, and he came and he took a microphone from that mosque, and he said, repeat after me. And he said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. He gave me Shahada. Later on, I came to realize that that Maulana thought I was an undercover. He was suspicious of me, right? And when I became Muslim that day, about 1,000 people lined up. All these men who I'd never seen before, all of a sudden were coming, hugging, kissing, giving me prayer rugs, giving me, this and that. And I'm like, what in the world is this? These people, to me, looked like they were dressed in a way that I'd never really seen, right? And I remember going and calling my mother. When I got out of that mosque, I walked to a payphone. Back in the days, we didn't have no cell phones like that. I called my mom from a payphone and I said, life is never going to be the same again. I want you to forgive me for everything I put you through. My mom used to have nervous breakdowns, and she had to be seen by a therapist, and the therapist said that I was her problem. People used to call her in the middle of the night saying they were going to kill me. Being an only child and going through that, all I wanted to do is tell her, is going to be different now. When I got back to Houston, I prayed the first day in a mosque, and I met a brother named Isa Parada and brother Abdullah Oduro, who actually is here. They were both studying in Medina University, and they were from my high school. And when they looked at me and with the people that I was with, they were like, yo, we became Muslim some time ago. We're from Hastings. Like, yo, I'm from there. I got with a new set of people, and I began learning. That's when I met Sheikh Yasser Qadi. He was living in Houston, met him, Walid Basuni, and then September 11th happened, 3 months after I became Muslim. My girlfriend took Shahada a week after I became Muslim, and a month later we got married. I had a Land Cruiser when I became Muslim. I had gold, I had money in ways that I didn't care for anymore. When I became Muslim and I heard Muslims can't have interest, I let go of my car. When I heard you couldn't wear gold, I stopped wearing gold. And being Colombian and wearing gold is very common. Got rid of it. Everything that I'd hear in the deen, and before I know it, it's like half of your deen is getting married. And subhanAllah, I got married to a person that I knew since the age of 12, who we looked into Islam together with. And as soon as we got married, my father began asking questions about Islam. And he didn't know English. He doesn't know English to this day. So I used to have to sit in the back of masajid and translate while people like Yasser Qadi and others were teaching. And one day, my father, at the age of 57, this is before September 11th, that day he realized that this is what he was looking for all his life. And I said, why wouldn't you accept it? And he said, I don't see why not. The way these people are talking should be the speech of the leaders of the world. It's based on peace. And this is what I was looking for, because there's a human being that exists here who you can follow. Every other religion, you can't follow human beings who follow that religion. But in this religion, you can follow a human being and really have the right guidance. He was talking about the Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that day, Sheikh Yasser Qadi was speaking, and I walked up and I said, hey man, my father wants to take Shahada. He wants to become Muslim. Can you give him Shahada? And I remember he took off his microphone. He said, you give him Shahada. So I was 23 years old, and the first person I ever gave Shahada to was my father at the age of 57. Like a month later, September 11th happened. My mom thought I was brainwashed because I stopped drinking, smoking, going out to clubs. My friends thought I was crazy. And it's like the whole world turns against you. And then September 11th happens. While Muslims are running around trying to be accepted, right, as Americans, we're like, it's not about being accepted, man. I grew up here. It's about being understood. It's about these people understanding that this here is the package that they don't, they don't even know exists. So the Muslim community asked me to speak in front of Telemundo and Univision because I knew the Spanish language. So they didn't have anybody to speak Spanish after September 11th. And as a 3-month-old Muslim, whatever Islam I knew, never had I spoken in public, I began speaking in the media. And these reporters were trying to like tackle, with the questions. Questioning if I was really Latino or if I became Arab. Questioning if I was really patriotic. How can you be a Muslim and then, being Latino, American? In the midst of this, we realized Muslims were weak in media. So my wife and I enrolled at the Art Institute of Houston. And I went into the field of multimedia and film. And my wife went into the field of graphic design. And in the middle of that time, she designed the logo of what we call Islam in Spanish. And I began producing audio and video material because there was no material in Spanish. And my wife's aunt, who was suffering from cancer, she was given the very first CD. It was a school project for her to listen to. And even though she was upset that we became Muslim and had a lot of misconceptions, she listened to it and became Muslim right before she passed away from cancer. Then we began passing out these CDs. And then people began embracing Islam. Then we began going to churches. In University of Houston, eventually Harvard University. In 2017, the Obama administration invited us to the White House. We've been featured by the New York Times, the Guardian, the LA Times, National Geographic. And now in Houston, we built the first Spanish-speaking Islamic center in America. And we bought a 2.5-acre property right under the name Alif, our neighborhood. The water tower that says Alif, right underneath, that's our property. And we've gone back to the community where we're not doing positive in. And with Islam, we're putting the seeds, you know what I mean, of positivity. And in the last 5 years, an average of about 100 people have embraced Islam every year. And online, based on video productions and whatever material we put, dozens of people, hundreds of people, alhamdulillah, are becoming Muslim. So what we do, we don't do for the sake of converting people. But this is what we mean by the name of this topic here, walking with purpose. There is a purpose now to live in. Allah Azza wa Jal told us that He didn't create the jinn, right, the human being and the jinn, except to worship Him alone. When we found that purpose, we saw that the Muslims were weak in media. We tried to fill that little gap. We saw there wasn't much explanation to our people in the Spanish language. Tried to fill that gap. And all I can say to you, brothers and sisters, is that you're blessed. You were born like with a silver spoon in your mouth if you were born into a Muslim household. You don't have to stumble in the dark like we did. The sort of neighborhoods you live in may not be the sort of neighborhoods we grew up in. But our struggle, trying to find out how to get out of these situations and be better, did form our character. And when September 11th happened and Muslims were scared about standing up in society and saying, I'm a Muslim, we were like, these people need to understand who Muslims are in Islam. And we're not afraid. If we weren't afraid before being Muslim, why are we going to be afraid now? So alhamdulillah, with that, you know, a lot of my friends, the ones that actually survived the neighborhood, you know, a good amount of them have become Muslim. We've had family members become Muslim. My mother, 3 years later, embraced Islam. My mother-in-law became Muslim the day my first daughter was born, even though she said she'll never go in public with my wife wearing hijab. Out of all these challenges and difficulties, all I can say is, to people like you have to figure out what it is that you can do and fulfill your own purpose. It's great that you go to school. It's great that you try to get good grades. It's great that you may come to the masjid, mashallah, for an event, this and that. But you have to transition from being a spectator and watching life go by to being a participant and acting based on what you know. And if you're able to find a gap and a problem in society that you can fill, this is the way we worship Allah. It's not just in a temple. It's by getting the values and then going into the society and being able to do something with it. So with that, I mean, there's much to be said about, you know, I did become a producer. We own an advertising agency. You know, we produced, you know, for the NBA, for Comcast, ESPN. You know, I've been fortunate to be going to Hollywood and learn from some of the top people in the business of filmmaking. And we use all these tools and story and production to be able to use it for the sake of Islam and what we do. There's a channel, right, through Islam in Spanish, but also at a personal level to build our family and be able to provide, right, being independent and being able to add value to companies and businesses. So there's a way that we can win in the dunya, in this world, and also in the akhirah, in the hereafter. But if we have to choose one, the hereafter is a lot better. Because in this world, everything's limited. Everything is shortened. Whatever is new today, tomorrow is old. Whatever you think you want, you get it, and you're still not happy. That's the way this dunya is. It moves fast, and it's low quality. Jannah is eternal and of the highest quality. You rather have a hut in Jannah than have palaces here in the dunya, if you have to choose. So with that, brothers and sisters, I really hope y'all can open up, ask for some questions. Jazakallah khair. And sisters, please do. I have 3 daughters, by the way. So my wife, 3 daughters, I really respect. Sisters have really good insight, so mashallah, their questions and the way they look at things is pretty unique. So please do participate as well. Bismillah. Yes.
Besides in Spanish, do you have any like easily accessible content in English that like I could see online or something like that?
MashaAllah, that's a good question, man. You know what's funny? I love producing media, right? But like we shoot it, we film it, we edit it. I don't usually like sit, like Sheikh Omar Suleiman is a good friend of ours. So mashallah, he will sit and produce content, right? If there's any content out there that I've done in English, it's like today's khutbah was recorded, right? So it's there, right? We talked about how we became Muslim, Imam Isa and myself, back in 2010 in California. That's out there. It's called Latino's Journey to Islam. Vice did a documentary on us called Why Are Latinos Becoming Muslim? Fahad al-Kandari, one of the people of knowledge from Kuwait, brought a crew over here and did a story of the reenactment. There's a lot of things that I skipped. I mean, I flipped over on a car. This is all before being Muslim, you know what I mean? Like, there's several times where I could have lost my life, right? So there's a reenactment kind of short film that somebody made. But I don't sit to usually create content in English just for the sake of creating content, okay? So if you go there and you look somehow, Mujahid, Fletcher, something will come up in English because we go through different communities and give different talks. But that's a good question because, you know, oftentimes we do see that there are areas where we wish we could produce some content. You know, I love the fact of dealing with youth. I've dealt with youth that are in gangs, that are, you know, Muslim and not acting like they're Muslim. And we've dealt with some amazing youth that are like impacting at a high level. And we've just like offered value, right? And somehow benefiting. So I don't think there's content like that, you know what I'm saying, that you can find, but there's all kinds of different content. And social media, I'm just not, I don't get down with too much getting on there, seeing what people are saying and how to step in there and be part of that whole discussion. But we do produce content ongoing. So just look up Mujahid Fletcher. I'm sure stuff is going to come up in English, and hopefully it's of some benefit. But if there were some topics that the youth would like for me to do, I'd love to know what that is, because that will give me the fire to possibly produce something. Allah knows best. Yeah, bro.
How you doing?
What's happening?
Assalamualaikum. So, mashallah, like I've been following your work, you know, not tightly, but I've heard of Islam in Spanish. I watched the documentary and everything.
Mashallah.
So my question to you was, as you've seen everything grow at such a pretty fast rate, mashallah, how have you managed like your own intentions and keeping it from like going to your head and all that stuff, right? Because
Keeping it from what?
like keeping it from going to your head and everything, right? Because like building like an organization and, you know, doing all this amazing work, how do you make sure that your intention is pure while you're doing it?
MashaAllah, that's a good question, man. You know, the Prophet ﷺ mentions to us in the hadith, which is the base of this deen, right? All deeds are judged by their intentions. And you find Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim beginning with that hadith. So it's fundamental, right? It's not about what you do, it's what your intention is. You know, if you know, mashallah, if we give charity in front of people, right? It's not just the action that you gave charity, if your intention was to have people say, oh, look, that guy's generous, right? If you don't do it for Allah Azza wa Jal, you lost, you know, and Allah is going to grade us, right? So it's a great question in regards to how we check our intentions. You know, one of the things that keeps us grounded, I think that, like, if I look at my life and several incidents, like I was in there was a block party back in the days, you know, and I was in the corner with a bunch of friends, and all of a sudden, I just wanted to go home, which wasn't usual. You know, we're out late, and, you know, whatever's going to happen that night, we're out late anyway. And I'm just like, man, I'm going to go home. And people were like, why? Like, I don't know. I just want to go home. Peace. I'll see y'all. 15 minutes later, a car passed by and shot everybody. If I had to repay Allah for that, how much or how can I repay Him? See what I'm saying? So I'm in debt. You know what I mean? You don't want to think that you live in debt with Allah as a negative. In fact, we all should think that we're in debt to Allah. The fact that your heart is beating, you owe Him. And all He wants from you is to be thankful, to recognize that He's the one that pumps the heart and created the heart. So when you have that level of awareness, even when you think you hit a high milestone, and some people can come and say, MashaAllah, whatever, whatever, right? Like somebody asked me, man, how many people have embraced Islam, you think, with you? That's like a trap. That's like a trick question for me. Because you know what? If I sit there catering to that question and think, it's me, I lost. You understand? He got me. He may not know he's setting me up for failure. But I'm like, whoa, hold up, bro. First of all, only Allah guides somebody, right? Now, I've been blessed to be part of, right, the process of somebody wanting to know about Islam, maybe being led to, Islam. But really, it was Allah who guided him, right? Because in my gaining knowledge of this deen, I did go and study, alhamdulillah, in Egypt. And I studied the Arabic language, Quranic studies, tafsir. When you realize that even the Prophet ﷺ couldn't guide his own uncle, who protected him from the Quraysh. His own tribe was trying to get him. His uncle, not being Muslim, protected him. But on his deathbed, the Prophet ﷺ couldn't get him to say the Shahada. That leads us to understand a prophet cannot guide his own uncle, who even protected and was good to him. How in the world do we think we can guide anybody if a prophet couldn't do it? So what we got to realize is that it's onto us to do the work because we're in debt to Allah. And then if Allah brings forth some benefit, it's because of His power and will. Hopefully, the hope is that on the Day of Judgment, when we go back and we lose everything in this dunya, that Allah looks at our intention, which He already knows it, and then we truly, inshallah, are, graded that we weren't doing what we were doing to please others besides Allah. Because if you do things 99% for Allah and 1% for somebody else, that deed may not be accepted on the Day of Judgment. Because it wasn't for Allah, wholeheartedly. He doesn't want the split, because He's the only one who gave life. He's the only one who gave us the ability to do anything. In fact, when Allah gives you the ability to do something, you know what? You think you may be good at that, but really it's the way that Allah gave you a gift to use for Him. And if you don't do it, it could backfire and you be questioned about it. You were given this and you didn't perform. That's how we keep grounded. Now, it's not about the people. People will love you one day and hate you the next. People build people up to then break them down. They got their own issues they got to deal with. If people can't even figure out themselves, how am I waiting for people to, make me feel validated and make me feel good about myself? It's a problem when people act like this. And youth have this issue with social media. My goodness, if somebody doesn't get a like on a post, you know what I mean? Some youth have gone to the level of suicide. You know what I mean? There's some kids, man, that have taken their lives because somebody didn't return a call. It is not exaggeration. There was a kid actually who made like $1 million on the Robinhood app, and then he lost it all. And he killed himself. He said it's impossible for him to be able to do this again. So, all this validation from people, we have to go back to really understanding what life is about. And if we really understand it and hone in on it, man, it's about a relationship with Allah, right? And even if the whole world is against you, but you're for this deen, for Allah, in the way of the Prophet ﷺ, doesn't matter. And even if the whole world is with you, and you're away from what Allah loves, it's a problem. And you may not suffer the consequences in this dunya. You may suffer it in the day, after the Day of Judgment, right, in the hereafter. So I think that's how we keep grounded, and we remind each other. It's never about us. And there's some good people, alhamdulillah, that we have around us, where we check ourselves. We make mistakes. I have people in my life that if I'm not operating to that level of standard, right, and it's getting to be questionable, if it's really about Allah or something else, I have people who will ask me to try to understand why and maybe help me clarify. Are we really doing this for the right reason? And if the answer is no, got to switch it up, you know? And that's refinement every single day. And what helps us is, you know, salah, right? You have to pray 5 times a day. If you don't remember Allah, Allah will cause you to forget yourself. And then issues happen. I've already gone down that. I don't want to get banged up in life. Yeah, you know, like Allah's powerful. I respect Him. I don't want to play, right? I already played a lot before. I didn't know Allah. Allah had mercy on me because I didn't know. But now that you know, you want to play games? Man, look, it's that we hope could be a positive fear. We fear Allah. We hope to have consciousness of Allah, to know our boundaries. And, you know, try our best, man, to move forward. But there was a reporter from ABC who interviewed us just a few, actually the report's coming out next week for Hispanic, what is it, Hispanic, huh? Hispanic Heritage Month, which just started, you know, a few days ago. And he was like, after doing all this work, do you feel proud? He's a non-Muslim guy, right? Do you feel proud about what you guys been able to accomplish for 20 years? And when I hear that word pride, right? The Prophet ﷺ mentioned that if a person has a mustard seed weight of pride, they don't enter Jannah. So I'm like, nah, we're not necessarily, it's not that we're proud. Yeah, we're trying our best. But every time we look, it's like we're just beginning. It's been 20 years, but it's just like when you're reading a book. You know what I'm saying? You could have read 300 pages, but you turn and it's like a whole nother chapter. So you always keep moving forward instead of looking back and saying, wow, X, Y, and Z, because all that stuff has issues. It's got shortcomings. It's got things you didn't know that you have to go through. You know, we make mistakes in life in order to gain some wisdom, understanding, experience. You know, when we're young, we think we got it all figured out. But when you make a lot of mistakes in life, you realize, wow, I am so, like, not perfect that, man, whatever I do, I mean, you know, it's like, if you can just do your best, and be happy with it, cool. But you always got to keep improving, you know. But the intention is something you always got to keep in mind. If you forget about why you're doing what you're doing, you can lose yourself, man. And ego and pride and arrogance can kick in, and the person can seem like they're doing the right thing, but internally, you know, Allah may judge us differently. And Allah preserve us and protect us from that. I mean, Bismillah. Anybody else? Yes, my man. MashaAllah.
What were some problems you encountered while starting your organization, and how did you solve them?
Can you ask it again so that they can hear?
Yeah, what were some problems you encountered while starting your organization, and how did you solve them?
MashaAllah. Well, first, we never thought about starting an organization. It was some of our mentors that said, hey, if you really want to do this work, you know, and get it to the level that it has the potential to be, you have to set up an organization. I was like, what is that? It's like, oh, you need an accountant, you need this, legal issues. And I was like, man, you know what I mean? Like, when I became Muslim, at best, I thought I was going to strive to just, like, go pray at the mosque and go home. That's what I saw every Muslim doing. I mean, you know, like, out of all the Muslims in America, what percentage of Muslims actually go to the mosque and pray? There's some studies that show it could be as low as 5%. Okay? So I'm like, man, if I can just go to the mosque and pray after I became Muslim, I'm good. This whole burden of you should start an organization, I didn't want it. I didn't even like the sound of it, because it just sounds like a commitment. And you know, we don't like to commit, especially on some insecure stuff we don't even know. But Allah brought the right people around us and said, don't worry about it. Like, what's difficult for you, right? We know somebody who knows how to do that. And building a team around you when you're ignorant of something, but somebody else knows that, and you trust them because they're doing things for the sake of, you know, the sincere sake of the work, mashallah, out of nowhere. I mean, some guy who was a CPA was like, I want to help you build this as an organization. I'm like, how did he know we're talking about that? And he's like, listen, I'll do it, I'm not going to charge anything. Like, what I have to do is like, look, I just need your, whatever ID, X, Y, and Z, come to my office. When we started doing that, one of the main challenges we faced was the Muslims. Till this day, the major Islamic organizations have not been the supporters of the work that we do. Those major organizations amongst the Muslims, I've come to realize, raise funds and have projects and have focuses that have to do with them, right? So if there's an organization who feeds people, right? That's their focus. So they're raising the money and they're feeding people. But when we become Muslim, I mean, we're not needing somebody to feed us. You know what I mean? We need somebody to explain to us how to deal with our parents who are not Muslim. So that Muslim organization has no clue how to even deal with us. You know? So you start realizing as converts in the Muslim community, when you're like, hey, we're doing this, Muslims are like, it's not relevant to me. Right? So what we were doing wasn't relevant to them. How many Muslims actually give da'wah or tell somebody about Islam? Not even in English. And we said we're going to do this in Spanish? How's somebody going to support that if they don't even do it? So what we needed to do was educate the Muslims and explain to them how it's not optional living in these lands that you just amass some goods and think you're good. No, Allah put you in these lands for you to do something regarding this deen. And from the scholars of the past, when you lived in the lands where, you were a minority, you need to engage in some way to help that society out based on the deen. And educating people was one of them. So when people begin to know that, this is valuable, this is important, right? A lot of that resistance from the community start coming down. But then, some Muslims are like, oh, what does he know? He just became Muslim. It's like, all right, cool, then I got to get some knowledge, right? So alhamdulillah, I studied with whoever I had in my locality, and eventually I went and studied, right, overseas, and then when I come back and give a khutbah, and they hear some Arabic coming out of my lips, they're like, okay. So all the obstacles that the Muslims are putting up, when you start overcoming them, they start realizing, you know what? They're just going to keep it moving. Some people, in my language, right, they were haters. They were hating on us. Oh, you can't do that. What makes you think you can do that? It would be like, what makes you think we can't? Right? There was an Imam in a masjid, mashallah, Hafiz al-Quran, when Imam Siraj Wahaj, a good friend of ours, came to that masjid, he was like telling the masjid, hey, y'all should support what they're doing. And they're like, no, they can't talk, they can't, microphone doesn't get given to nobody. But, we want you to speak, Sheikh, right? Imam Siraj. So he gets up there to talk, and this is a Ramadan. And Imam Siraj knows I'm from the neighborhood. And he knows what that means in Brooklyn, because they shut down like 19 crack houses when they became Muslim. Right? They reformed their neighborhood. He knows what neighborhood we're from and how we're doing this after September 11th. So I remember him telling the Muslims, brothers and sisters, this brother, come here. And I was like all shy and stuff. He's like, come here. And he had me stand in front of him. He's like, this brother right here, his name's X, Y, and Z, and y'all need to, support this brother. He's going back to these neighborhoods. This is what we need. Y'all live in America. Blah, 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 blah. Start giving them all this stuff. The Imam of that masjid had told me, if we let you talk about what you do, people may support you, and if they give you guys fund as an organization, we have a budget here in the masjid. And I was like, wow, you're a sheikh, you're an imam, you're Hafiz al-Quran. Let me ask you this question. Isn't Allah al-Ghani? Isn't He the rich? He owns everything. Doesn't He have enough resources for you to do something for the deen and for us? You tell me, you have more knowledge than me, right? That man dealing with us like that, the day that Imam Siraj was talking about this, I remember there was a cardiologist. He came and grabbed my hand after that event, and he brought me into that Imam's office, right? And he was a Syrian doctor. And he told the Imam, excuse me, Imam, let us use your computer. And he asked him to get out of the way, and he sat down, and he was like, let me get your email. I want to invite you to a gathering. It was called a Houston Donors Group. He said, we're a bunch of physicians. We put our money together. It's about $100,000 worth of our zakat. And we have organizations come and talk about what they do. And whoever gets first place gets 50%, meaning 50,000, right? And whoever gets second and third place gets 25%, like 25,000, 25,000. We want you to come and present what you guys are doing. SubhanAllah, man, first time we go over there, I produced a 3-minute video. They gave me 5 minutes to talk. I produced a 3-minute video. It explained everything. And then I told them we have two minutes if y'all want to ask questions. And there were like 13 different organizations there. We were the youngest. And alhamdulillah, we won first place. 50,000 came in. And I remember telling Imam Saraj Waj, yo, you remember where we went? Remember all this stuff? He said, Akhi, I want you to understand this. That Imam, the Sheikh who was telling you, there's not enough, right? If you come over here, oh, the budget and all that stuff, if we let you, he's the same Imam that this doctor told him to move out of the way. Akhi, Allah showed you that He will take people out of the way whenever you're trying to make way for this deen. He will take and remove issues, and you just got to keep going. That's the sort of mentorship we learned from people who had been there. So when the Muslims began to understand that we weren't going to stop and we were going to do it for Allah, alhamdulillah, some of those people who doubted us before, now they're asking us to speak to their youth. You know, come here, give a khutbah, can you X, Y, and Z, you know. Mashallah, I mean, especially when they start looking at the political issue, like we're Latino, we're the fastest growing ethnic minority in America. They start thinking, oh, you know, it's good for the Muslim community to have some diversity, right? Now they want to put us here because it makes them look good. But I have to be aware, are Muslims doing this for their own sake of how they want to be perceived, or are they really doing it for Allah? And we try to work with those who try to do it for Allah. But the opposition of the non-Muslims is not, it wasn't really there. They just want to know about Islam. That opposition came from the Muslims, which is interesting. So you got to look at your brother and your sister with mercy, but you can't let anybody be an obstacle between you and Allah. And mashallah, some people you can work with, others, you know, mashallah, you pray next to, but you don't have to necessarily work with. And some people you work with today and you find that their ethics are different, and it's okay. So I think we've grown for 20 years. This organization, now we own a place. We used to rent from a school before, an Islamic school, and people were becoming Muslim and everything was going great, and then they're like, you got to move out. Like, man, CNN, we're speaking on CNN in Spanish here. You know, when the Muslim ban happened, we were speaking on behalf of the Muslim community in Spanish. And you're telling us we got to leave? Like, you going to kick us out? Like, this is a grocery store? I was like, what sort of Islam is this, man? Is it because y'all are one organization, we're another, and y'all just kind of go? That difficulty, in the midst of the difficulty, comes ease, right? Along with it. So we just went online and we started telling all the Muslims in the world, listen, people are becoming Muslim here, we were renting, now we're kicked out. Now we got to buy a place. And the place we found was like $1.4 million. And alhamdulillah, in about 3.5 months online, doing productions in digital marketing, we raised the money and bought 2.5 acres worth of property right underneath Alif, the name of our neighborhood. We bought it cash. And Muslims all over the world. I'll never forget a kid from Somalia donated $1 from Somalia. You know, mashallah, maybe there was a lady who donated $40,000 on behalf of her deceased husband from the UK. That's amazing. Person who we never met. But when I looked at those 40,000 and I looked at $1 that a Somali kid gave, I was so amazed that in Somalia, a youth possibly doesn't have any money, going through difficulty, possibly gave everything he had. And that $1 worth of sincerity could be way heavier on the scale. And that's kind of the equation we saw. So the same Muslims all over the world, mashallah, that we possibly were struggling with to explain who we were, now coming together and giving $5, $10, $50, 100, 1,000. And in a matter of 3.5 months, we raised the funds and bought a place, and now is the only Spanish-speaking Islamic center in America. So now we're in the middle of, inshallah, working towards the build-out, because we're going to build out a museum highlighting contributions of Muslims from Spain, and there's an investment. Before we used to think, man, how are we going to raise, now it's like $1.6 million to build it out. We've raised 500,000, but we still have like $1 million. Before we used to be like, how are we going to do that? Now we're like, if that's what needs to be done, I don't know how it's going to happen, but we just trust in Allah, and Allah is going to make it happen. That's it. So that's the beauty of it. The difficulty makes you realize Allah doesn't really have any obstacles, right? If you deal with Him, it's the firmest handshake that'll never break. But if you start looking at people and issues and getting caught up and talking about folks and all that stuff, that has nothing to do with worshiping Allah, right? You get lost. And so, alhamdulillah, again, we have a good base of people who remind us, and yeah, we trust in Allah. I don't want to keep you all extra or longer than we should, getting the sign that we should end it here. None of the sisters asked any questions. Y'all good? Totally. There was one. Could I take one? I know they handed her the microphone. Yeah? I'll try to be.
What could we as Muslims do with our fortune to, I guess, get involved with communities like the one you've been brought up in?
Mashallah.
How could we benefit them?
Mashallah, I appreciate it. So I'll be brief. Look, if you go on the Facebook page, right, or Instagram, look up Islam in Spanish. First thing you can do is just like the page, okay? You're going to see on your feed people popping up taking shahada. That's going to, inshallah, inspire you to realize this is real, right? Allah is guiding people, right? This work is good. We produce over 5 to 7 hours worth of video production every single week, live Q&As. So you guys could use your social media skills, because we know you got them, and share that with as many people as possible. Just spread it. You know what I mean? If you go to school with somebody who happens to be Spanish, say, hey, there was this guy, he was Colombian, he came over there to my spot. I want to share this with you. Share with them the Vice documentary is real. That Vice documentary has really touched the hearts of non-Muslims. White Americans I've run into. I was renting an office, and this white American lady, and she was like, I knew you from somewhere. I looked you up, and the Vice documentary, it made me and my boyfriend cry. Right? These people are like, I didn't know them in life. So just share, let people know, about the work, and most importantly, make dua. Your dua may be as sincere or more sincere, than, I don't know, than what we could even imagine our dua being. Just make dua, man, that, Allah can guide us, protect us, and accept from us, and that He guide humanity to this deen and have mercy on us, and forgive us for our shortcomings. I hope, inshallah, we can all do that, So, Jazakumullah khair, may Allah bless y'all. Thank you so much, Brother Shams Rahman and everyone for this. Again, this was not really in our program, but I'm glad we did it. And yeah, inshallah, look us up online, follow, and we'll keep the conversation coming. If there's anything we can do for you, brothers, sisters, you guys are the future, man. The youth is the future. There's no understatement. Just find your place, inshallah, and play it to the best of your ability. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
While we are getting ready to pray Qayam, just one announcement. Those of you who would like to invite your either a co-worker or classmate who are Latino, would like to learn about Islam, you can invite them tomorrow. The program in the gym from Asr until Maghrib with Islam in Spanish. Assalamu alaikum.
الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. واتخذ قوم موسى من بعده من حليهم عجلا جسدا له خوار ألم يروا أنه لا يكلمهم ولا يهديهم سبيلا اتخذوه وكانوا ظالمين. ولما سقط في أيديهم ورأوا أنهم قد ضلوا قالوا لئن لم يرحمنا ربنا ويغفر لنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ولما رجع موسى إلى قومه غضبان أسفا قال بئس ما خلفتموني من بعدي أعجلتم أمر ربكم وألقى الألواح وأخذ برأس أخيه يجره إليه قال إن ابنه القوم استضعفوني وكادوا يقتلونني فلا تشمت بي الأعداء ولا تجعلني مع القوم الظالمين. قال رب اغفر لي ولأخي وأدخلنا في رحمتك وأنت أرحم الراحمين. إن الذين اتخذوا العجل سينالهم غضب من ربهم وذلة في الحياة الدنيا وكذلك نجزي المفترين. والذين عملوا السيئات ثم تابوا من بعدها وآمنوا إن ربك من بعدها لغفور رحيم. ولما سكت عن موسى الغضب أخذ الألواح وفي نسختها هدى ورحمة للذين هم لربهم يرهبون. واختار موسى قومه 70 رجلا لميقاتنا فلما أخذتهم الرجفة قال رب لو شئت أهلكتهم من قبل وإياي أتهلكنا بما فعل السفهاء منا إن هي إلا فتنتك تضل بها من تشاء وتهدي من تشاء أنت ولينا فاغفر لنا وارحمنا وأنت خير الغافرين واكتب لنا في هذه الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة إنا هدنا إليك قال عذابي أصيب به من أشاء ورحمتي وسعت كل شيء فسأكتبها للذين يتقون ويؤتون الزكاة والذين هم بآياتنا يؤمنون الذين يتبعون الرسول النبي الأمي الذي يجدونه مكتوبا عندهم في التوراة والإنجيل يأمرهم بالمعروف وينهاهم عن المنكر ويحرم عليهم الخبائث ويضع عنهم إصرهم والأغلال التي كانت عليهم فالذين آمنوا به وعزروه ونصروه واتبعوا النور الذي أنزل معه أولئك هم المفلحون. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. إن إبراهيم كان أمة قانتا لله حنيفا ولم يك من المشركين شاكرا لأنعمه اجتباه وهداه إلى صراط مستقيم وآتيناه في الدنيا حسنة وإنه في الآخرة لمن الصالحين. ثم أوحينا إليك أن اتبع ملة إبراهيم حنيفا وما كان من المشركين إنما جعل السبت على الذين اختلفوا فيه وإن ربك ليحكم بينهم يوم القيامة فيما كانوا فيه يختلفون ادع إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن إن ربك من بعدها لغفور رحيم ادع إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن إن ربك هو أعلم بمن ضل عن سبيله وهو أعلم بالمهتدين وإن عاقبتم فعاقبوا بمثل ما عوقبتم به ولئن صبرتم لهو خير للصابرين واصبر وما صبرك إلا بالله ولا تحزن عليهم ولا تكن في ضيق مما يمكرون ولا تحزن عليهم ولا تك في ضيق مما يمكرون إن الله مع الذين اتقوا والذين هم محسنون الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر السلام عليكم ورحمة الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله
الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين لا أقسم بيوم القيامة ولا أقسم بالنفس اللوامة أيحسب الإنسان أن لن نجمع عظامه بلى قادرين على أن نسوي بنانه بل يريد الإنسان ليفجر أمامه يسأل أيان يوم القيامة فإذا برق البصر وخسف القمر وجمع الشمس والقمر يقول الإنسان يومئذ أين المفر كلا لا وزر إلى ربك يومئذ المستقر ينبأ الإنسان يومئذ بما قدم وأخر بل الإنسان على نفسه بصيرة ولو ألقى معاذيره لا تحرك به لسانك لتعجل به إن علينا جمعه وقرآنه فإذا قرأناه فاتبع قرآنه ثم إن علينا بيانه كلا بل تحبون العاجلة وتذرون الآخرة وجوه يومئذ ناظرة إلى ربها ناظرة ووجوه يومئذ باسرة تظن أن يفعل بها فاقرة كلا إذا بلغت التراقي وقيل من راق وظن أنه الفراق والتفت الساق بالساق إلى ربك يومئذ المساق الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين فلا صدق ولا صلى ولكن كذب وتولى ثم ذهب إلى أهله يتمطى أولى لك فأولى ثم أولى لك فأولى أيحسب الإنسان أن يترك سدى ألم يك نطفة من مني يمنى ثم كان علقة فخلق فسوى فجعل منه الزوجين الذكر والأنثى أليس ذلك بقادر على أن يحيي الموتى الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.